What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the LA Soccer Hub Show. My name is Gio Garcia. Week 12 of the MLS is underway. A lot going on here this past week, man. So much going on. We also had the CCL. LAFC are heading to the CONCACAF Champions League final versus Leon. Those dates already been set. May 31st in Leon, Mexico. June 4th at BMO Stadium in Los Angeles. It's going to be exciting. So we got a lot to get into. And once again, we got my man, Justin Ruderman. Justin, how you doing, brother?
Doing well, man. Out here in the Bay, came out for the game, but yeah, first loss of the MLS season for LAFC. So maybe a little bit to criticize for the first time.
Yeah. Oh, I should also mention we got the Lakers as well. If you guys are watching, we got the Lakers playing tonight as well. They're up 2-1 against the Warriors. I got them Lakers in 6, so we're hoping that goes
It'll
well.
be
And
Warriors in 7, but
Justin's, of course, is a Warriors fan. It's a shame. If I would have known that before this, I probably wouldn't have been friends with him. But look, hey, he's the grandfather then.
Oh man, it's all right. It's all right.
I was watching. You know what's interesting? I was watching. What was it, game 3 or game 2? I forgot which game I was watching. I was at a bar. I was watching the game. It was just me, and it's just like they had the game on. And I'm watching the game. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like obviously going for the Lakers, and then I just hear someone clapping next to me, and this lady. And as soon as like the Warriors did something, I think Clay hit a shot, Stephen Curry hit a shot, and she starts clapping. I think she had just sat down, and I look over, and I'm like, no way, I'm sitting next to a Warriors fan. And she wasn't a Warriors fan; she was just happy for the game. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you wearing a Lakers jersey because it just like killed killed my vibe. I was like,
Uh,
no way, a Warriors fan just sat next to me. And I think it was
uh,
game 2. It was a game that the Warriors won, but I was like, oh my god, it was one of those things when you sit next to the opposing fan, you're just like, oh, I don't want to sit next to this person. I don't know if you've ever had that type of experience.
I mean, normally I'm okay with it, but it's just in the environments. Like when you're in LA, you don't expect that, right? Like I went to UCLA, and I remember one time we were in, NCAA tournament. It was Sweet 16. I was at a UCLA bar with a bunch, out on UCLA's campus, basically with a bunch of UCLA people. And there was just one opposing fan from the opposite team that was just like super loud in the middle of the crowd for no reason. Like, why are you there?
Yeah. No, she was just excited. It was just one of those things that I'm like, oh my god, those things. It just for whatever reason it just brought back in. But yeah, man, there's so much going on in sports. I think this is probably one of the best times of sports. You got baseball, basketball. Obviously, you got the footy going on here and all over the world. But let's talk about this weekend's game because you were at the LAFC versus San Jose at Levi Stadium where the 49ers play. I got to watch it. It looked exciting. Obviously, it didn't fill up. It looked like all the lower section filled up. I haven't been to that stadium, and I know they play. The Mexican national team has played a few games up there. Talk to me about the stadium. How's the atmosphere? Because I did see a couple people's stories. It did look like it was raining. It was cloudy, and I think you're still currently up in the Bay. So talk to me about the whole atmosphere and obviously the game.
Yeah, well, first of all, only those bottom two bowls were for sale, so no other seats were for sale. So they sold pretty much, I think, what was for sale. 45,000 over 45,000 was the announced attendance. It was pretty full, as you say, except of course those 3252 put in the absolute rafters in the top corner in the 400s. um, but yeah, no, it was raining leading up to the game, the morning of, even in the afternoon, early afternoon. It continued to drizzle, so the pregame activities, the early fan fests and things were a little bit dampened by that rain. But by kickoff time, the weather came around and it was no longer raining, so it was pretty good. But yeah, people flowed in kind of as that rain kind of started to stop, right as kickoff kind of came on. But it was a great atmosphere. Obviously, LAFC 3252 brought 1,000+ people from LA, not counting obviously the rest who bought on resale. And then San Jose showed up, right? At 4:30 kickoff, I think, did a lot for the Bay Area. It allowed a lot of kids to come out, and it was just a really good atmosphere, I think, from both sides, and made for a very good game on the pitch because these two teams have been performing well. Two coaches that have been showing tactical flexibility, tactical awareness, and it showed again on the pitch.
Yeah, and I would say on top of it too, just on TV, the pitch looked amazing. It looked nice. And I don't know, sometimes at San Jose, what I think is PayPal Park or whatever, PayPal something stadium, whatever they play at,
PayPal Park.
the the field tends to be a little bit more slippery. Um, every time I see any teams play there, and obviously I like that you're having kind of like these one-offs, right, at these stadiums, right? We're supposed to have it here at the Rose Bowl, right? For El Tráfico, it didn't have, it hasn't, it's been moved over to July 4th, but I'm liking a little bit of these one-offs because you get a bit of a bigger venue. Obviously, MLS, most of the MLS stadiums can only house maybe 30,000 or depending, 30,000 max. The bank I think is like 22, 23. So if you could bring more people in, in a sense, lower the price, the ticket price is a little lower, and it allows, I'm assuming, allows more people to go to the game, but also go to a venue that people are familiar, right? In the Bay, people are familiar with the 4090 Stadium, and the Bay is a lot closer. Or I mean, well, is the Bay a lot closer than San Jose? I think that's like an hour and a half, 2 hour, 2 hour, 2.5 or 2 hour drive. Maybe you can speak more on that, but maybe the people that like the footy, they can drive down a little south, and they don't got to go all the way to San Jose. And I think having that opportunity allows San Jose to get more fans, but also you still get to see a team like LAFC as Carlos Vela, Buanga, and all these other players at a bigger venue. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, as far as the bigger venue, absolutely correct. It draws more fans. It's allows the ticket prices to go down a little bit, as you said, and it's for the big game. It's a marquee matchup. They change the time, make it a little earlier. It's not a 7:30 kick that MLS would normally do, which makes it harder for families to get out to. As far as the actual commute, you would think that from the outside, right? Because it's San Francisco versus San Jose, but in fact, the stadium is in Santa Clara, which is actually about 10 minutes from the San Jose Earthquake Stadium. So they're
Really? Okay.
very, very close. It's just the naming. So yeah, that's how the Bay works. San Francisco, they call themselves the San Francisco 49ers, but they do not play in San Francisco. They play in Santa Clara, which is very, very close to San Jose.
Okay, I didn't realize it was that close to San Jose, because I've done that drive from San Francisco to San Jose, and I recall it was like an hour, 2 hour, an hour and a half, 2
Yeah,
hours
because they
drive,
don't
depending
actually
on
play in San Francisco. Yeah.
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 Well, look, it happens all over the world. Teams name themselves after a city and then end up playing somewhere else. But look, also property up there in the Bay Area is very limited too, depending where you're at. Let's talk about that. Obviously, LAFC got the first loss. Look, San Jose is playing good. If it wasn't for that PK at the end, I think it was Maldonado that committed it on Bobosi, if my memory is correct.
Mhm.
Um, Look, it was bound to happen. This team is rolling. This team is rolling hot. Hot. They're rolling hot. They just came off a CCL win. I didn't think they played bad. There were some players that played a lot better than others, but I mean, with the tough schedule and what they have, I don't think they. I think they're going to be a little bit upset because giving up a penalty in the last 10 minutes, because they were so close away of walking away with a draw. But I don't think this team should be that mad or disappointed because they got so many more games, and we know at the end of the month how big that schedule is. They have a game this week. This I think is it tomorrow against Monterey for the U.S. Open Cup, and then they play at home this weekend, or they're playing this weekend. I don't know if it's at home or away, but they're playing this weekend. So it's so many games going on, and then they play next Wednesday, and then they play again at home. So it's a lot of games. Talk us through what LAFC is facing these next 2 weeks leading up to that CCL final.
No, you're absolutely right. Just in this month, LAFC have 7 games, right? Home and away, and four of them, I believe, are away. So it's very difficult. A run of fixtures, and obviously LAFC have been in incredible form. They've been able to do this in both competitions, which is not really something we've seen. So a little bit of a lapse, a little bit of fatigue, I think that did show against San Jose. You kind of excuse it, but it is something to recognize. Hey, it did happen because we've been talking about, well, is this team just invincible? Can they rotate constantly and they can still find performance after performance without seeing any fatigue? I think the only player we can say that about is Denny Bouanga because he's played every single game for LAFC. Meanwhile, going to Africa and Gabon and playing a full 90 minutes for them as well. And he looks, fully fit, and he
Mhm.
was very, very good for LAFC on Saturday. But the rest of the team, especially that back line, I think we saw the fatigue set in mentally and physically. They were slow to rotate on that first goal, a little bit the same on the second goal. Maldonado shouldn't have made that a challenge on a Bobasi, as you mentioned. So it's a good point to just take a step back, recognize, hey, we know that it's not possible to win every single game.
Mm-hmm.
But as you mentioned, the performance wasn't bad. You dominated possession against a very possession-based San Jose team and created more chances, more shots on target. I do believe San Jose had the edge on XG, probably due to that one Jaimiro Montero missed chance in the first half, which I inexplicable. But yeah, as you mentioned, a okay performance from LAFC, I think, is how Steve Cherundolo phrased it, and I would agree with that.
Yeah, and then look, they know what they're up against, and I think you look with such a tight schedule, and this next week we'll see what the lineup is tomorrow, right? Against Monterey for the U.S. Open Cup. They got so many games going on this month, and I think Steve. I think in the past he's probably get away with playing more of the players. We'll see who he starts tomorrow and obviously this week against RSL. Just looked it up. They're playing against RSL, and then they play SKC next Wednesday, and then they play San Jose again the 20th, right at the bank. So at the BMO Stadium, excuse me. But there's so many things that's going to happen. And look, I think right, we know the biggest competition is at the end of the month, and the rest, right? I think there's going to come a point that you're going to want to rest these guys, and you're going to have to take the L or draw or I don't know, a result that you're not accustomed to, because we're going to have to see, because you're still going to want to. The good thing is they're still third. They're third in the table. And say they were to drop another game or so, I don't think that's going to really hurt them because of what they got going on in the final month. So I think rest is going to be so crucial for players like Boanga, even though he's been playing like a machine. He's been playing every single minute. Carlos Vela, right? Tillman, some of those players. We'll see if we get Chiellini, if Chiellini's able to be available for the final of the CCL. So there's a lot of intangibles that Cherundolo is very good at, and is going to have to handle these next couple of games. But also with so many different competitions and everything going on, we're gonna start to see some players that we're not accustomed to used to seeing playing or starting, because just of the length of the schedule. What are some players that obviously have stood out to you that you would like to see get a little bit more minutes?
Yeah, I think especially in this Open Cup game, obviously you want to continue to have, a contingent of starters so that you ensure that you win that game and continue in a U.S. Open Cup and value every competition you're in, especially a competition which you've never won in the U.S. Open Cup. So I think that you do want to bring some of those, but I would also like to see a couple players like Eric Duenas, who showed out really, really well in his first MLS start. A player like Nathan Ordaz, who has shown out really, really well for the LAFC2 side so far this season. LAFC2 have had a very poor season thus far, but he has been a standout. Hasn't gotten minutes for LAFC. Maybe a player like Noah Dolenmeyer, if you're still short on center back depth, right? If you're still without Murillo and Chiellini, then you only have two fit center backs. They brought Dolenmeyer on for the 1-day signing, I believe, for the game. Maybe you want to bring him again and actually give him some minutes this time. I'd like to see those type of players at least getting minutes, if not starting. I would like to see Duenas as start the Open Cup, because I think that you start those two, you put some other starters and a couple bench players around him, you still win that game and get those guys some good experience.
Yeah, I'm with you on Duenas as well, because man, he's been so exciting to see the youngster what he's been able to do, and he's one of those that's come up through the academy, and you're starting to see the fruits of the labor of producing young talent, young local talent, and now to the first team. I want to go a little bit more in depth, Justin, on the CCL win, because look, they dominated Philly 3-0. It was a massive win, and look, anytime LAFC or Philly play, it's always back and forth. It's very tight. Obviously, with I forgot which Philadelphia player got the red card, but once Philly was down a man, I think it was very clear for me and everybody that LAFC was going to win this game, or win the second leg of the game at BMO Stadium. But I think to me it's impressive what they've done and how they're doing it. In just around 6 months, they're going to two, in like 6-7 months, they're going to two finals. Obviously, they won MLS Cup. Now they're going to the Champions League. And I think it speaks volume, like I mentioned before, the recruiting and how they're able to bring players, also mature players. And we also, right, we got to speak to Ryan Hollingshead, and he talked about other things that the team does and intangibles that makes them feel comfortable outside of the players. When you bring in players, you make LA feel like they're home. Right, I'm paraphrasing. Let's talk about that and what we heard from Ryan Hollingshead and what we saw that last Wednesday against Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, LAFC have done a great job, and it helps winning those trophies to bring in these players, right? Because when you are winning the Supporters Shield and MLS Cup double, it makes a player like Stipe Buke, like Mateusz Bogus say, "Hey, I can go to LAFC, I can show my talents on a winning team, and I can get that move to Europe. Hopefully, that big move that they're trying to get later in their careers, right?" So I think that is absolutely a played a part. As far as the game on Wednesday. I think it was just a Steve Cherundolo tactical masterclass, honestly, against and I believe those are the two best coaches in MLS at the moment, in
I
Steve
agree.
Cherundolo and Jim Curtin. So to see Steve Cherundolo tactically outdo Jim Curtin and I believe Jonathan excuse me, Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer asked Steve that exact question after the game. What do you think that you just outcoached Jim Curtin? And he said, and Steve blew off the question, obviously said, no, I don't believe I did that at all. That's not what this game was about. But all of us watching the game can say that is what it looked like, because Steve continued to stick with a defensive midfield shape of a double pivot that he switched to at halftime in the first leg. It continued to keep LAFC defensively solid while allowing them to play out very well. And it made it feel like LAFC had no chance of losing that game at any point, really. And this seems to be a system that Steve Cherundolo is willing to switch back and forth with, because he originally started the San Jose game back with the normal 4-3-3, but then at halftime switched again back to the Philadelphia style of the double pivot. So it is something that we're going to see Steve Cherundolo switch back and forth with, depending on the opponent and depending on the situation in the game. But Steve Cherundolo has shown clearly that he knows exactly when that needs to be done.
Yeah, he does, and he's such a savvy coach. Look, to me too, like obviously in the way the fashion what LAFC is doing just within the last 6 7 month, right? Win the MLS Cup, the Supporters Shield, now going to CCL final. They're on the verge of potentially becoming a dynasty, right? If they ended up winning the CCL Cup, right? We go one game at a time, one cup at a time. But what they're doing is so impressive. And even Jim Curtin said that LAFC may be maybe one of the best teams in MLS history. And I would have to agree with that. Just with what they're doing, the players are attracting, how they're beating these teams, how they're beating MLS teams, how they beat Philadelphia to get to the CCL final is just impressive. And everything that they're doing, I keep saying this, LAFC is the standard when it comes to MLS. And if they're able to win the CCL final, they are going to show that they're the best team in North America and now be able to compete with the teams, right, in Champions League and all the teams around the rest of the world and show off, right? It's one game at a time, but they have the opportunity. They're on the verge of getting that. They're 2 games away from making that thing come true.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt about it. Not only would they become the best team in North America, obviously by winning the CONCACAF Champions League, but I think there's no doubt that if they win that Champions League, they become the best team in MLS history at this moment. I don't think that there is another team that can really compete with this level and consistency that LAFC have been able to maintain thus far over 2022 and 2023. Over 2 seasons, that's never been seen in MLS through the long period. And if LAFC can prove it by winning a CCL, is something that only Seattle have done, but they dropped off massively in the league because of that, then it'll prove that MLS is reaching a new level.
Yeah, they definitely are. Look, let's go some things to finish off here. There's a lot of things happening around the league. We'll just touch on a couple coaches were let go, were parted ways, however you want to say it. What are your thoughts on that? Because last week we talked about it, um, and we also had other players speak about current situations. But what are your thoughts? Because I think you tweeted something out. I think I read your tweet this morning. About coaches getting let go and that there's a little bit more of a standard. But let's talk about that. 2 coaches that were just let go today.
No, I think that's definitely the case, that the standard is getting results now. It's starting to become that, regardless of the situation that you're given as a coach. And we can see that because the two managers sacked today were in relatively different situations, I think. In Chicago with Ezra Hendrickson, excuse me, he it was given a not very good team with an extremely underperforming designated player. And I don't think he can do that much with the team, but he's still sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and results matter. If you aren't going to get results, even if you aren't given a great team, you're going to get sacked. And I think that should be the case in any league in the world. When you look at Gerhard Struber, well, the results are obviously not coming. The performances maybe are coming a little bit more. I mean, Sean Nealis after the game said that they think that their performances are actually really good, but that the results are just not coming. And I think when you look at stats, that they back it up as well, because Red Bull actually lead the league in open play expected goal differential. So they're playing well, just not getting results. I also think that obviously with Gerhard Struber, it's behind the scenes issues and things that are off the field. And that is why I believe that that's probably the best decision for Red Bull, is to just have a clean slate with a new coach and who wasn't involved with all of those issues. But I don't think that with Gerhard Struber, it was necessarily a tactical issue. As we said, they're playing well. It's just that the results weren't coming. But generally in Europe, when that happens, right, even when a team is playing well and results aren't coming, that manager gets let go because results are so important, because there's a threat of relegation. When you're at the bottom of the league, it doesn't matter if you're playing well if you're going to get relegated.
Yeah, no, that you make a great point. I think one thing that stood out too was Chicharito. He said it was time they needed to change. Look, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he had mentioned something about they needed to change what's on the training pitch. He's also mentioned about players not wanting to step up to the podium and talk to the press conference. That to me signals, once it's out there, once a player says that, that locker room is divided. And that to me is just confirmation. I think we all assumed, but that to me was just confirmation of what I had mentioned last week about Greg Vanny, and also this week about what's going on over there with the Galaxy and everything there, because you typically don't really hear the players speak on that or talk about that unless it's hit that boiling point. And I think them losing to Colorado, who's also at the bottom of the table, was that tipping point. And I think, to me, I know you didn't have Greg Vanny on your list, but it's been clear to me, Greg Vanny, to me, he has, you mentioned about the other coaches who didn't have the talent. Well, he's had all the talent. He was able to recruit all these players and bring these players in. He just hasn't been able to do it. And that, to me, why I think the Galaxy, it's looking like the Galaxy may have to move on from Greg Vanny. Because look, when you have your star players say that to me tells me he does not buy into what Greg Vanny is preaching. He's over it. And none of those players are hanging out. I can promise you this, that none of these players, I have no intel, but none of these players are hanging out with each other outside the pitch. And that happens when you're losing. And that happens when you don't believe in what the coach is preaching. And that happens with all the other chaos that's going on with them there. So now I ask you, has your thoughts changed since what came out this past week?
My thoughts haven't changed. I think that what I said last week is the same thing. Well, first of all, he wasn't on my top 5 list of managers that I think were in jeopardy of losing their job. But also, Ezra Hendrickson wasn't on my top 5 list of coaches that I thought was in jeopardy of losing their job. So first of all, I can be wrong, but also, but also
that list gotta update that list. Gotta update.
No, but also, I think it matters about the club culture within, because I thought that Ezra Hendrickson wasn't in that. But as I said last week, I think that there were 10 managers at actual risk, and so I would have put Vanny and Ezra Hendrickson in those. But I think that in Hendrickson's case, I thought he was less likely because he wasn't given a great team to start with. With Vanny's case, I think he's less likely to actually get sacked because the FO seems to back him, right? And regardless of these, protests and all these type of things, that doesn't really seem to be affecting the decision making of the front office or Greg Vanny. So that seems to be the case for me. And obviously everything coming from Chris Klein is, well, I will resign at the end of the season if this doesn't happen, at the end of the season if this doesn't happen, right? It's not about things happening right now. And so that's why I don't think that it's necessarily going to happen soon. That doesn't mean that I don't think he should be in the hot seat, because he absolutely should be.
Yeah, no, the big thing to me is once your star player comes out and voices opinion, it's to me it's a
Oh,
done
you're
deal.
right.
It,
No,
it,
you're right
it,
there.
I'm not saying he's gonna get sacked or let go right this next game, but that to me just signals everything that had been leading up to, because of what they've done and how they overcome. And I just, to me, it's unfortunate because you have a player Chicharito who's trying to get back to the Mexican national and trying to do, but I think a player like Chicharito, a player like Ricky Puig, this season does them no good, and they're wasting a year. But look, that's a case for another thing. But I think, to me, Greg Vanney is on the hot seat, and you got to see what. And if look, I'm not for someone losing their job, or that's not what I'm going for. But I think what you alluded to your tweet this year, earlier today, is there's more urgency on wanting to get results in MLS, and we haven't seen it these last couple years. And I think that's what I'm starting. I like that there's more urgency to want to win now, right? If the coach is given proper time, right? You look, say the coach gets sacked within a year, okay, well, he wasn't able to really have his imprint. But if a coach has 3 years, maybe even 2 years, and if you have a talented team, look what Sharondolo did in a year, in a year, in a year, and that is impressive. That to me tells me, look, yeah, you got, look. Some people may say he had talented players. Yeah, so do a lot of other players. So do a lot of other coaches have talented players. But if you can't put the pieces together or figure out that, to me, that's skill in itself. Yeah, it's skill to recruit players and get those players, but there's also another skill to be the head coach and bring it all together and to win, but not just win, dominate and do what Steve Schoenel has done. And to me, that's why he should have been coach of the year last year. Obviously, that didn't happen. But this year, it's very clear to me he is going to be the coach. And I think people sometimes undermine a coach having talented players. I think that's even more of, I think to me, that's even more pressure, because you're expected a lot more. You're expected to get these results. You're expected to go to the championship. That's even more pressure than just being a good coach with just okay players, you know? So, I just wanted to speak on that, because I was like, when I saw that today on Twitter, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't expect so many, like this trend to start getting the urgency, and I like that there's urgency of wanting to be a club that wants to win and succeed.
No, I think it's a great point you bring up. Well, obviously the urgency I already tweeted about, but the pressure of having good players and the expectation to win, and the lack of respect when that winning does come, I think is apparent throughout football. I mean, you look at Pep Guardiola, I think
Mm-hmm.
is the greatest manager of all time, but the constant argument against him is, well, he spends a lot of money, he buys the best players in the world, and sure he does, but those are the only players that can play his type of football, and he continues to win constantly with those players. So that's the same type of thing, to a lesser extent, obviously, with Steve Cherundolo. When you're succeeding with good players, you should still be given that respect.
Yeah, no, I agree. Final thing, it looks like we may get the MLS expansion news. It's looking like it's going to be San Diego. I think someone had tweeted that it's going to be San Diego. Give me your thoughts on California getting another MLS club, and it being 200 miles or 130 miles south of us, in San Diego.
Absolutely, man. Copa California on its way.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I mean, to me, three teams was no need for that type of, you know, enhanced rivalry. But with four teams, yeah, make it a little bit of a rivalry, make it a little bit of a thing between who can be the best team in California each year. Because well, we know with the parity in MLS that will change every single year. So I think it should be exciting for everybody in California, especially obviously those in Southern California or San Diego. I think that they're going to bring in some good players. I think I would expect maybe a player like a Klaus or an Evander to be their first type signing, because there's a large Brazilian population in San Diego, and you can appeal to that. So I think some good players could be on the way, a good team, and I think a good venue over at Snapdragon. They updated a little bit, and yeah, it'll be a whole new team. Obviously, not involved with the Loyal at all, completely separate. So I do think maybe they're missing out on a little bit of the loyalty from that fan base, because the Loyal do have a good loyal fan base, ironically there. But yeah, I just think it's a good thing for MLS to have another team in California and hopefully increase these rivalries.
Yeah, 4 teams: San Jose, 2 teams in LA. Now it's looking like a team in MLS. I mean, team in San Diego that's going to join the MLS. $500 million fee to register down there. It is insane. I like San Diego, so I don't mind. I wouldn't mind going down there watching a couple games. And look, I love that MLS is growing and all that. So yeah, I just want to get your couple thoughts on that. But look, man, Justin, I appreciate you always hopping on, brother. Always talking, always voicing your opinion, give us your insight and everything. And yeah, enjoy the game, because you're going to the game tomorrow too, right? In Monterey.
Yeah, I'll be in Monterey, and I'll be in Salt Lake as well.
Monterey is so beautiful. If you guys haven't been to Monterey, California, go out there and check it out. It's beautiful. Northern California, even though I'm a Southern California guy, Northern California is really beautiful, really nice. But at the end of the day, like I started this podcast, Lakers in 6, Justin. Lakers in 6.
Dubs in 7. We'll go. We'll see. We'll see. Y'all, this is recorded, man. This is recorded. Everybody could come back to this when the series is over.
Yeah, and the series is over. LA moves on. Look, it's been an exciting series between the Lakers and the Warriors. There's another game today. It was a game 4 today at crypto.com. So I'm excited, man. So many things going on. But what I would love the most is just to, give Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green their farewell, send them off to Cancun nicely, just with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, all that, and put a smile on your face,
They could, but they won't.
With that said, Justin, I appreciate you being on. Everybody tune in and watching. We'll catch you guys next time.